Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Imperial HoloNet. I am GID123,
And I'm Nero Cole.
and today we are going to begin a series of retrospectives, a series of retrospective events. That should be the title.
Yes, it should be the title. This is a work in progress, folks. Bear with us. This is consider this the pilot episode.
This is the pilot, and hopefully it's one of those pilots where it's all uphill from here. The pilots that actually are good, and then just goes downhill like Once Upon a Time.
Well, we can always hope, right?
Exactly. We begin our series of retrospective events, by talking about a little game we like to call Kingdom Hearts 2. Why we start with 2? Well, because I started with 2 because that's the one they bought me when I was a boy. So, I'm working backwards.
When you were a wee child.
Yes, they did. I got that one first. I didn't know why, but I did, and I was happy. It had Pete on
Well,
it had Pete on the cover, so I knew it was Disney. Um,
yeah.
Anyway, this is a good place to begin. Let's start with how we got into the Kingdom Hearts series. I think I pretty much told my story. I got it for my birthday, and yeah, it's my birthday, and it was the second one. Cole, how'd you get into it?
Okay. Well, to tell this story, we have to go back to the olden days, the days of yore.
The days of
So
yore, back when we had VHS instead of these finangled
exactly.
Blu-rays.
So I got this game originally, I think, for Christmas, along with three other games. One of them was the Two Towers, the Lord of the Rings game, and one of them was the first Kingdom Hearts game.
Ooh, I had that one on GameCube. That was so good.
So I sat it on my shelf for at least 2 or 3 years. I never bothered to play it,
Mm-hmm.
and I never. I
Did you know about Kingdom Hearts at the time? Because
no, I did not know anything about it at the time.
I remember seeing commercials for it back in the day, and all I knew was like there's a brown-haired boy and Maleficent and Jafar in one scene, so I knew it had to be somewhat good.
Um, I know anything about it at the time. I didn't know. I didn't even know it was Disney. So one day I was bored. I had gotten home from school and nothing was really striking my fancy. So I picked up the first Kingdom Hearts game, put it in my PS2, and there the journey began. I have to say this right now. Kingdom Hearts was the first game that opened my mind to greater story potential. It really showed me what can be done with a story in a different structure than I was really used to.
Uh,
So as you can suspect, I love the game.
yeah, Kingdom Hearts 2 came out in '02, right?
It's a
It was the
decade old.
the early days of gaming
Yeah.
when you were a
And,
young Nero Cole. You were a young Nero
wait,
Cole.
what does that make you?
I don't know.
um, so I loved it, and as you can no doubt suspect. Then Chain of Memories came about through the Game Boy Advance, and I enjoyed it, but I was just and kind of I didn't have very many standards at the time. So when I saw them like new Kingdom Hearts game, gotta get it. And I was a kid and not the brightest of ones either.
Oh my. I had standards. I watched all 5 seasons of Yu-Gi-Oh! Dang it. Actually, no, that is standard. I liked New Gunray as a kid, so I had my standards.
Well, there's that.
Exactly, good sir.
So after Chain of Memories came out, there was a time where I was anticipating to it was finally coming back for the PS2, and of course, all us kids were hyped as hell. So I remember vividly that afternoon. I was probably in the third or fourth grade. I got in the car. My grandmother handed me a bag, and inside was Kingdom Hearts 2. And I remember going home, and the first thing I did was hop in that game and started playing it. And it's a game that I've always had a very loving relationship with, and I've always regarded very highly.
And a lot of fans I've talked to regarded highly.
So I want to put that in everybody's mind. This was a game that was my be and end all. One of the games that made me who I am today. I respect this game like many others probably would not.
But today?
But today, well, we're going to talk about that.
Oh boy.
Oh boy, we're
Get
going to
ready,
talk about
folks.
all right.
Get
I
ready.
want to, and I want to let you know. I hope I don't offend anybody, but it's just the way I feel. It's the way Joel feels. So, if any of you understand any of this differently than Joel or I have ever experienced it, please do let us know. I don't want to dislike this game. I really don't. I
Fortunately, some of
want to
my other
find.
friends I've talked to who really like Kingdom Hearts 2 on now.
I mean, I want to love this game, but well, we'll get there. Joel, why don't you begin with your best thing, worst thing?
Okay, best thing, the gameplay. I guess I'll just go with the easy answer. And graphics. Graphics are pretty good for their time.
After
Gameplay's pretty simple, hack and slash. My criticism of the gameplay though, a little too easy compared to the first one. But then again,
yeah,
that first game is hard. I never even finished it, man. Granted, I
yeah,
probably could have
one is
leveled
not
up a little more, but
is
still.
not doesn't hold your hand, sadly.
No, well, that and I probably could have leveled up more. I was not a patient gamer. No, or patient. Worst thing, story. Story sucks.
Well, I guess it's my turn, isn't it?
Enter the dark depths of your critique, my friend.
I'm gonna go with two best things actually. The first thing I have to make bring to light is the soundtrack. Yoko Shimomura does a fantastic soundtrack. She did the soundtrack for one. She's done the soundtrack for all the Kingdom Hearts games, and it shows here. And it's one of the best things about this game. Second thing, as Joel mentioned, the gameplay is spot on. A tad easier from the first one, but it's a little more user friendly than the first one could claim to
I
be.
think they fixed that some of the gameplay issues I have with Burst by Sleep. I've never played it, but I've heard good things about the
Yeah,
gameplay.
I think the gameplay continued to evolve to a different field in Birth by Sleep. The worst thing, instead of just saying one thing, mine is the story too. Very sadly,
Oh, don't
the
worry. There are a lot of people who hate the story of Kingdom Hearts.
um the two main things that pop up when it comes to the story is its inconsistencies and its sense of continuity or lack thereof.
Oh yeah, this game is like. Actually, no. I think the problems with the continuity begin with Chain of Memories.
Yeah, but the problem is this game did not fix it and continued to just screw it over 10 times.
Big time. I think if we want to get into that, we're gonna have to do some backtracking. I think we need to talk a little bit about Chain of Memories first.
Yeah.
Just you know, just as a sort of a precursor, because I feel like a lot of the problems I have with Kingdom Hearts and the series overall start with Chain of Memories.
Yeah. The thing with Chain of Memories
Well,
that
oh, sorry.
oh you go ahead.
Well, my thing is the thing with Chain of Memories. It should just be a Riku game. Sora shouldn't even
Yes.
be a part of it. You should maybe you can do the sleeping thing, but make Riku, but don't make that the main focus.
I would agree, and they have him be asleep and have Riku figure out the rest as he goes. That was a prime example of a time Riku should have been the main focus, and sadly, we haven't really gotten that a lot from Riku.
He's constantly like the best thing of the series, right?
Yes.
Like, it's sort of funny. Once Upon a Time has this too, where they have like that one character who's like, "You're the best thing. You're the best character. You are the one who did not devolve. Maybe you had a little bit of an up and down at the beginning, but you stayed true. You progressed. You didn't change back. You could have taken the easy route, but you didn't." And Riku's that for Kingdom Hearts. He is
Well,
the character who stuck to his progress. He didn't devolve. He's interesting. He's the most interesting character.
yeah. And I think if we're going to mention Riku, we cannot not mention Mickey because he's a big part in Riku's development overall. And I think Mickey's one of the shining points of this series overall. He doesn't always get a lot to do, but he has a very good presence, and it really helps with Riku too, especially in Chain of Memories.
Mm-hmm.
His and Riku's relationship make that game a lot better.
Right. Although I like Mickey's presence more in the first game.
I
I
do too.
but that's because it's so built. Everything built up to that. I mean,
Yeah.
you knew who the king was. I think it's like we did. That was obvious, but I like the build up. Um.
The problem with Chain of Memories is that for the Sora half, you build up to payoff that completely twists around and ends up not being anything you completely expected. Sometimes that can work, mind you. However, when you twist it around and make you feel like this whole entire experience has been misleading, that's because it kind of has been.
Oh, that's
It's
and the problem with Chain of Memories and tying it back too is that a lot of Chain of Memories sets up things that come out of nowhere.
yeah.
And I'm going to be plugging my Kingdom Hearts series, which I'm writing. It'll be on DeviantArt, and we're on episode 8 of this recording, and we're hopefully going to get to episode 9 soon.
Oh,
But oh, sorry, I had to do that. But a
of
lot of
course.
my problems with 2 stem from Chain of Memories again because none of the stuff that 2 and Chain of Memories are saying, because 2 and Chain of Memories are kind of a larger story arc,
Yeah,
and are not seated and don't feel natural to 1. I feel like 1 is like in its own little world.
yeah. And that's because it kind of is. Chain of Memories, it sets up a logical progression, but never introduces that progression. So the progression that it tries to make in 2 would have worked a lot better if we had gotten any type of indication as to what the nobodies were in Chain of Memories or in 1, to be exact. I think if we had gotten a little bit more of that in 1, things would have worked out a little better. Oh, and I hate to jump ahead, but we have to talk about this and the fact that the organization's true goal gets pretty much shafted in Dream Drop Distance.
Well, that's the problem with well, we'll get to this, but Kingdom Hearts 2 is, I feel like that was built up too much to be the final game.
Yeah.
And then 3 is kind of now building off things that we've retroactively created in terms of the history and the lore and the continuity.
Yeah.
We'll get to that later. And you can do it where it's separate, and then you have 2 more that kind of are more connected. The original trilogy of Star Wars does this perfectly.
Yeah.
I feel like where A New Hope is sort of like, I feel like A New Hope works better in terms of it's separate enough, and you can tell, things weren't always thought through. Like,
Mhm.
spoilers, Vader is Luke's father. That definitely
Yeah.
wasn't thought through, but the problem with and the difference with Kingdom Hearts is that 1 sets up nothing and doesn't build off of something in Kingdom Hearts 1.
Yeah.
It introduces an entirely new concept in the second one, which is Chain of Memories technically, and then pays it off in Kingdom Hearts 2, but this isn't something that was stemmed off from 1. This was
Yeah.
something that stemmed off from the next game.
Yeah. Um, what was I even going to say? There's a lot to talk about, folks, so bear with us.
We could just start with the characters.
But I want to touch on this point real quick. And it kind of ties into the nobodies. Oh, I know exactly what I'm talking about. And the thing that all of us have to realize, of course, and this is the thing people will always bring up in defense of these games, is that no one knew what 1 was going to do. No one knew what that game was going to evolve into.
Nobody knew what A New Hope was going to evolve into either.
Exactly.
So that's no
The
excuse.
Exactly. So that's the excuse people bring in, but I think that even brings up another problem that Joel and I have professed in, I think, a video before this, is that Kingdom Hearts has only seen the vision of one man, and that has done it probably the most injustice.
Yeah, Kingdom Hearts kind of has the Lucas problem in that should have delegated.
Yeah. Like, Square has plenty of different writers and such. I just wish we'd got a couple of fresh blood with Nomura's vision tweaked a bit, but I feel like his unrefined vision is part of the problem here. Because when you give a man too much power, where can they not go? Where should they not go? They're free to go anywhere.
I
So
think
when
the
you don't
vision
have
isn't
boundaries,
necessarily the problem. I think it's the execution of said vision.
exactly. And that's what I mean. We needed more blood on this. We needed new eyes to help with this vision, to execute it in a way this series had not done before. Gameplay wise, it's fine.
But yeah, but because Nomura's not working on the gameplay. I mean,
Exactly.
and that's why I'm doing my Kingdom Hearts TV series, which is on DeviantArt. I'm gonna do this all through the podcast. Ah ha ha. I'm shelling out.
Uh,
I'm shelling out. Ah ha.
I mean, and to not to bring up Star Wars again, but Star Wars had different blood later on in the films. Whether it worked or not varies depending on the film, like with Empire or Return of the Jedi.
Bingo. Especially with Empire, that's the best example. I got it. It's like Empire's that movie where all the right people just came together at once.
Would you not argue that Episode 5 is is somewhat equal to what Birth by Sleep probably should have been?
No, I would say Birth by Sleep is a little bit like the Star Wars prequels in terms of their
Would you?
story. Well,
Well, yeah,
think
but I
about it.
mean,
It's
I mean, in
about
terms of tone.
oh, tonally. Yeah, I would say that maybe a little Revenge of the Sith in there
Yeah.
by the end. I thought we talked about story. Like, you do realize Birth by Sleep is the Star Wars prequels, right? Old man is trying to corrupt the young youths to join the dark side, and says that the dark side isn't all that evil, and the young man who has brown hair and isn't well acted, by the way. Sorry, Tara. Is kind of getting duped by all these villains, and at the end, he has to fight his best friend.
Yeah, I would say that the acting is completely a dishonest is a yeah, is completely a problem with Tara. I think it's just what he's given to do. And let's be honest, Tara is not the brightest of characters in the Kingdom Hearts universe.
Oh no.
I mean, I've played a little bit with him, and he is a moron. Probably the biggest moron I've seen. Almost to the point where I'm like, you almost deserve what's happened to you for how you've acted.
Yeah, you trust the person called Maleficent with the big horns. And the sad thing is, I like Birth by Sleep more than Kingdom Hearts 2 on a story level.
I think I do too.
I think more stuff works than it doesn't. With that one. But we won't get into that. Well, that's for another day.
Another day, and that will be once I've completed that too. So, so maybe
Do you have that on gameplay?
yes. Another thing for any of you who don't already know, the Kingdom Hearts games were re-released for the PS3 in the remixes and are soon to be released for the PS4 in the remix with all 6 games combined together.
Nice.
So this should be accessible. Whether or not you should check this out, we'll talk about that later. But why don't we talk about characters?
Right. Let's start with. Should we start with our main brown-haired spiky boy?
Um, Another positive I'll throw out before we even move on. I think the voice acting in this game is spot on.
Yeah, for the most part. I think Haley Joel Osment did a great job as Sora. All the Disney characters are perfect, but that's because they're being played by the
And I
professionals.
would argue that Justin McCartney is pretty good as Roxas. He's convincing and does
I
and
think
brings
I
to
like.
light
I
about
think I like Rock. I think I like his voice sometimes, or maybe no. I think I like that when he does it then more.
maybe.
Because I think
But
Joel
that's
Osment, I think is kind of losing the. Is kind of gotten worse.
oh, I do
In,
too.
in
His voice has matured so much that his
his
voice.
Vanitas is great.
Oh yeah, that's because well, that's a different role for him, and it's one that accommodates him in kind of a way.
Right. It's always kind of funny though, seeing Sora, in the first game having a boy's voice, a very high pitched boy voice. Not high
Yeah.
pitched, but young boy. And then Kingdom Hearts, he hit puberty.
Oh yeah,
At
he
least
hit it fiercely.
physically hitting puberty. Mentally, Sora has never hit puberty.
I would say he's more mature in the first game than he is in two.
Oh gosh, yes. Oh yeah, he's way more mature in the fanfics, and that's the reason. There's a reason for that.
Nominate, what did you do to Sora? What are you not telling us?
I know it's like he. I watched the first game and you play the first game and Sora. Well, I guess we'll talking about Sora now. I like Sora. He's friendly and nice, and he's a likable chum, but he's an idiot.
Yeah,
And just
he's not even understanding what's going on around him. He's the typical shonen protagonist in that regard, sadly.
I don't even know what shonen protagonist means, but
Well, people will know when if any of you anime fans out there, you'll know what I'm talking about.
could you explain, or at least a little bit?
Basically, you're kind of oblivious to the ongoings of the world. You just do what's right because justice.
I don't even think he does it because of justice. I don't even think he knows what's going on half the time. Like he's never serious. He's like it's
The
all
only
just
time
one
he's
big.
serious is in Hollow Bastion. And the problem is that gets derailed so quickly, it's not even funny.
Exactly. Like in the first game, I feel Sora had the perfect balance of fun-loving adventure mixed with a little bit of skepticism, mixed with a little bit of sadness. In fact, Sora's sad a lot in the first game.
Yeah.
Um,
Not to the point where he's emo, but to the point where it's noticeable.
well, a lot of bad stuff's happening to him, and I feel like in
Exactly.
that one he gets it. He knows the stakes of what's going on.
And that's the issue here is the stakes aren't.
Non-existent.
Yeah.
And that's the problem with just the storytelling is that the way it's structured, we're not progressing.
Yeah.
And the plot is truncated to like 3 places.
Yep. Twilight Town, Hollow Bastion, and the world that never was. Those are your 3 places.
And okay, the first Kingdom Hearts game for the most part, I feel they padded out the plot nicely. Where you go to Travis Town. Wonderland's important because Alice is the Princess of Heart.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Deep Jungle, not so much, but that ending kind of makes it work.
Yeah.
Um, Agrabah, beautiful, best world.
Mhm.
Neverland.
I think Neverland's the second best world in my opinion, just because of how much it's tied into the rest of the game.
Which one?
Neverland.
Yeah, Neverland. Halloween Town and Atlantica, not so much.
Yeah.
But that's okay. You need some. Oh, Monstro.
Not sure it's important.
I always forget Monstro because that's not technically a
I
world.
do too.
Um, and then Hollow Bastion.
And end of the world.
Exactly. That's like 5, 6 worlds right there, all important.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with filler worlds. Have an adventure, maybe have learn a life lesson or something. But
But make them relevant.
or just make some or in some way. I feel like Kingdom Hearts 2 would be if they're really good at a series.
Yeah.
That should have been the TV series.
It should have been.
I don't know how you would do it, but still.
Especially for the structure. Would it make the idea that Hollow Bastion, the second visit, tries to incorporate that maybe using the Keyblade to fight the Heartless is not a good thing at this point? That probably would have worked a lot better as a TV series, like Joel kind of has been hinting at earlier. But
Go check DeviantArt.
yeah.
Well, yes, because it's a bad mechanic. Because what am I not supposed to do gameplay anymore?
Yeah.
Like you just if you make that your idea, then there goes your gameplay.
Yeah. And
Um,
it's dropped instantly.
yeah, we never talk about it again. Or the manga that could have worked on manga. I don't know what they do with the manga version of that.
That'd be a thing to read. You and I should read that at some point.
I've read the manga. I like Kingdom Hearts 2 manga better.
Hmm.
Although I would say that the padding and plotting is still a little. I feel it works better in the manga, but maybe that's because they have a little more liberties.
Yeah.
Which manga is pretty good, but that's because it's following the game.
Yeah.
Pretty tight. Where was I going? Oh yeah, Sora. Boy, we dive. Back to him. He's likable, but he's an idiot.
He's very likable, but he's an idiot. Yeah. He should be. With all the information he's given, he should be able to figure out the pieces, like figuring out Roxas is nobody. I feel like that's something he should have come to just by himself. And that's the other issue. Another issue I'll have with this game is he's kind of handed everything. Sadly.
Yeah, it's even something I've had problem with in my series. Like, how much can the Keyblade do before it just becomes an OP weapon?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe allowing Tarzan and Sora to talk to each other, that seems like fine. You know, enough of my
The other
problems.
I think we need to talk about the Keyblade and another thing a little bit as kind of what entities they're played up to be in this game.
Right.
Because there's some
I
there's a
like
bit of,
I like thinking that the Keyblade itself is its own living sentient entity.
I would agree with you there, but that's something to discuss in a minute. Anyway, let's continue.
But actually, I wanted to ask you a question, Cole. If you were handing the writing chops to this game, how would you characterize Sora? Because I feel like the idea of making him happier is not necessarily a bad one. Because I always kind of find his mood kind of annoying in the first game. Like, cheer up, dude! You're such a moper. But I feel like they made him. I think they made him too just la 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 kind of a guy.
It's something that they needed to find a balance with, and that's something Nomura's never been too particularly strong with. That's something that most of his characters that he writes, even in some of the Final Fantasy games, they're typically one-sided on a lot of things and tend to be throughout most of the game. Sometimes it makes sense, but other times it creates annoyances for the people playing it. I could go into that. I could make all kinds of arguments for that, but that's neither here nor there. But
But what would you do? Like, I feel like I feel like you would need to, because you can't make him snarky. Otherwise, you're just turning him into Riku. 'Cause I feel like he
yeah,
has a snark. He's more snarky humor. I always, but you can't make him. I can't. Well, I guess here's an example for anybody out there. He's sort of like Matt Smith's Doctor in a way, but without any of the smartness. You don't know what Doctor Who is, Cole, sadly, so you wouldn't get that reference.
yeah.
Um, Although actually, Matt Smith's Doctor might have been a good template because he actually does get serious from time to time. I feel like you needed him to become. I think you needed to have moments where he could be lighthearted, but he needs to like snap to it when something bad happens.
I think the best example to go with, I would have him be more like Mickey.
That's a good idea because he's kind of supposed to be your Mickey
Yeah,
because originally when they were planning this was going to be a Mickey game.
yeah,
But you know what I'm saying, right? Because
yeah.
I feel like where he is now, he knows Riku's safe, if not missing. He knows Kairi's safe, right?
Yeah.
So I feel like
So this should,
those birds are definitely lifted.
I would make the argument he's a bit better in the Game Boy Advance version of Chain Memories. That's the personality I wish they had went for a tad more.
He got angry a lot in that game,
Yeah, but that's the kind of side I wanted to see.
especially because of if Burst by Sleep has anything to deal with it. Yeah, he's got himself a dark side.
Yeah.
One that I'm going to I can't wait to get to. Oh, Phineas better be big on Kingdom Hearts 3 because I love that
I,
character. He's
I,
fascinating.
he
I wish
is.
he were more psychotic and less stoic, but for the most part, I love it.
Um, Donald and Goofy are. I'm going to say this, and people will probably get mad at me. I think they are the most generic versions of the characters they've been in a while in this game.
I'd argue with you with Goofy. I feel Goofy's at least wise.
I'll agree with you there, but even then, they don't get a lot of stuff to do in this game, and that really sucks. I would have liked to have seen them interact with Mickey a bit more. I feel like we might have seen more of that come out with Mickey, but sadly, we never do.
I feel, yeah, I mean, it's one of those things with this game especially because I feel like the plot doesn't help the characters.
Yes.
It's not, and part of it is just the characters, but I feel like also plot needs to
Yeah.
help. Like, you can have great characters, but if you have no plot, they're not going to do anything.
Plot needs to complement the character.
And this plot does not.
Yes.
Like, Sora can't get angry
It
because he has no,
tried. Oh boy, does it try.
like, Sora doesn't get angry because he has nothing to get angry over with all the worlds you visit.
Yeah.
It's more
And
like,
even with Shirey missing, I'm surprised he doesn't get angry more at the organization.
exactly, especially after they kidnap her.
Yeah.
But then again, he doesn't know that. Or does he?
Well,
Do they
we're
tell him?
in Hollow Bastion's second visit. We're played up it's played up that he knows that Syx has her, but he gets on his knees and begs for him to take him to her.
Okay, there. After that, during your second visits, I think Sora needs to get mad more. Like, he just needs to be like, we need to find Kairi, we need to find Kairi, we need to find Kairi. Come on, let's go.
And that's another, and that's a point that I'm going to make. It exists as a point to a larger problem. That's just it's very inconsistent with everything it's trying to do all at once. This game tries to do so much that everything ends up just falling to dust.
I think another problem with this game is if you're gonna do it the way you did it, I think you actually need more plot. I think the plot's too thin.
Yeah.
It's not full enough. Like, okay, I feel like you need like 3 plot points going on, maybe 4. Like, you need the organization plot, which in my opinion, is the weakest. And if you're gonna keep it that way, at least give Maleficent something to do. Give the villain something to do. Give a third party something to do. Have like 4 parties going on here. Something. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Like multiple plot threads that all intertwine.
And the other issue with it is too, to build off of what you're saying, even though it tries to make you think it has other existing plot points, it's just dumbed down filler elements that don't wind up being much at all.
Like, what's Maleficent's point in this game? Find a
Uh,
castle? What's her plan? What does she do half the game?
I guess she's after Kingdom Hearts, but she doesn't make any plans to really go after it. I mean, why not try to hijack it from Xemnas?
Actually, okay. Um, the manga I think did a better job with Maleficent because I actually remember the manga. In that she specifically states her goal is to build an army of Heartless and take back Hollow Bastion. They actually show. Okay, so you know at the beginning of Hollow Bastion Visit 1, you see that black sea surrounding the castle.
Yeah.
In the manga, they go deeper. That's all Heartless. That's all a bunch of Shadow Heartless.
That's what I was to let to believe too.
And well, the manga has to follow the game, so it still kind of hinders a bit. I could show you a link to the manga later. You should read it. Try to read it tonight and a little bit tomorrow, and maybe we'll go over it again. But in that game,
that might be until next week, though. It's just letting you know that I got a trip coming up, so just
okay,
let you know.
okay. Well, you can read it when you have time.
Yeah.
Basically, the idea is Pete's going to the different worlds, collecting Heartless, building up an Heartless army at Hollow Bastion, and then when the Hollow Bastion War happens, the Battle of 1,000 Heartless, as it's called in the Wikipedia, they state that was Maleficent who orchestrated that, at least started it. Those were her 1,000 Heartless that were attacking.
And in the game, it's hard to wonder if it was the MCP who did it, if it was Xemnas, if it was Maleficent. You just don't know.
Because yeah, that's what always confused me is because I guess we're talking about Maleficent now. During that first scene, you see her and she's commanding the Heartless, attack the nobodies and then attack Sora, and then you don't see her again. You see the Battle of 1,000 Heartless happen. Hang on, I gotta put in my plug just a second. I'll keep talking, and then what happens is Xemnas shows up and he's like in control of everything. It seems like, but then Maleficent shows up again and summons her own Heartless, but she was commanding the Knights at earlier points. So it's sort of like, what's going on here?
And they try to get away with it by saying they align with whoever's the strongest, but I need more than that.
It's again it's funny thing that the manga actually does that better. They actually do the Heartless thing better. At least that segment. I'm not sure of the entire story, but at least that segment.
The thing is, the other issue is we don't know the Heartless intimately enough to know exactly how their instincts work, how exactly who they view as the strongest.
I like the idea of them allying themselves with whoever's the strongest. That's not a bad idea.
It's not a bad idea, but it comes across in the game as very shallow. It seems just as a way to get things happening.
Right.
And it's not and I don't know if it's gone into any other time in any of the other games.
Kingdom Hearts 1's kind of interesting because you have Ansem, who in this game is a Heartless, and then actually in the manga they do state he was the leader of the Heartless even before we found out that. So, but then you had Maleficent and her group. So it's like, are they controlling a faction of Heartless, or do Heartless just show up to anybody?
Factions of Heartless would be interesting, but I need clear-cut goals as to what each faction would want. That's something that can work. But we digress.
That gives me an idea for later. Yeah. Cole, do you want to bring up the next topic?
Well, there's one other character. I feel like there are 2 other characters we need to go into before we.
3 technically. 3 technically.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll save Roxas for last.
Oh, we're talking about Mickey, but okay.
And Mickey too, but so technically 4. Let's start with the kind of the retcon, but also kind of the interesting part this game tries to do somewhat well, but I'm head scratching my way a couple times through it. It's hard to really get is Ansem the Wise.
Oh yeah, people hate that. People hated that retcon. Somebody got. I
It's
remember watching a commentary for Kingdom Hearts 2. They were MPO'd by it.
Ansem the Wise is not a concept I think is a terrible idea. I think its execution and its lack of screen time does it the most injustice. Because what he talks about in Hollow Bastion, I mean not in Hollow Bastion, and the world that never was, I'm like, what?
And he's played by Christopher Lee.
Yes, which is awesome. By the way, Christopher Lee does a hell of a job voicing him. I'll give him that.
Christopher Lee gave out the phone book and be amazing.
Yeah. It's a character that I think could have worked, and I think future games got the idea for a tad better, but I feel like they realized that a bit too late.
I feel like you would need to see the fact that Ansem was a Heartless earlier.
Yes. I feel like he's someone that would needed to have been in the first game in order for me to care a lot more.
Well, technically he was.
Was he?
They mentioned Ansem as their leader of Hollow Bastion.
Well, yeah, but we never. Have him be there.
Maybe you could have done something like Leon looks like something like, huh, it's strange. He called himself Ansem, yet something seems wrong. Like you see that in the first game, he paid off. Like maybe something's not right. Yeah. I don't know, something like that. I'm gonna do that maybe.
Well, let's talk about Mickey.
He's BA. He's awesome.
He's one of the best parts of this game. That when Goofy gets apparently killed, and he throws off that code and summons his Keyblade. That's one of the most badass moments in the series.
Oh yeah! Don't mess with Mickey. Epic.
And I love all those memes out there that say you knew him as a boat boy, but I knew him as a king. I support all of y'all.
Oh, I didn't know that was a thing, but yes, like salute.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, boat boy king.
And he's also a decent character. He's kind of the wise guy that the party needs from time to time, but he's also a source of. He's part of the plot in the sense of how he's tied to Riku.
And I love that. I feel like Riku and Mickey's relationship. I'm in the ship already. Set sail. But their relationship. Called relationship. It's relationship.
Yeah.
Their relationship is fascinating because Riku is good anime kid. Like this is anime
troubled
kid. Troubled anime kid. Dark side or kind of Anakin Skywalker done right, or at least kind of Clone Wars Anakin Skywalker, I guess. Turn to the dark side, come back. Darth Revan would love this kid. Yeah. Kind of a person, and then you have MICKEYMOUSE, his best friend. Like blows your mind, and it works. Or at least it didn't change the memories.
Yeah, and you would think that those two things would not mesh well, but it's great. It's just their interactions, the way they depend on each other, and the way they interact with each other.
Goofy in the first game.
Yeah.
Because that trio works. I don't know why, it just does. I like that trio. I sometimes like that trio more than Mickey, Donald, and Goofy.
I do too.
But they work. They work. I wish we could explore it more because it's awesome.
Which hopefully maybe later on we'll see explored. Let's talk about Riku before we move on, before we touch Roxas.
Riku's great. He doesn't get much to do. He's great though.
He's kind of what Mickey served in the first game. And while I don't know if that's a good service to it or not, I feel like it works well enough in the ending. And I don't want to touch on the ending now. We'll touch on that later.
I think it does. I think it works. I think that's the route you take, personally. I would, at least. I'd stick with that for the most part.
Well, I mean in the sense of I wonder if we should have him show up a bit more.
Yeah, probably that too. I think that works. I think for him, he needs to show up more. With making Kingdom Hearts 1, you didn't need that.
Yeah.
Because I think that just the way they built that story, though, works in that regard. Yeah. Should we talk about Kairi just a little bit? She gets nothing to do.
Yeah, she's kind of in here to be the damsel. She's the damsel in distress. What more is there to be said?
The sad thing is, I feel like I feel like I still can't do her character justice, even in my series. I'm not quite sure what to do with her yet.
I feel like from what we're seeing from 3, Three might be the game that starts trying to utilize her a bit more, and I hope that's the case because she is supposed to be very relevant to the plot. She is a princess of heart, so I want to see
Princess
that.
of
And apparently,
Light.
Princess of Light, yeah.
I kind of
So I
wish
want
that
to.
Prince. I wish Kyrie though wasn't the Princess of Light, though, only because I feel like she would have some interesting darkness in her. But you can't do that unless you like she was an enigma.
Well, and the other thing is that she's apparently going to be a Keyblade wielder. So so I guess what we can say about her is her status is pending. There's not much to be said about this game, but I feel like other games might finally pick up with her, but we can't really say that until then. But as for this game, it's just there and it doesn't add much to the plot.
She wasn't much of a plot either in Kingdom Hearts 1, even though she was kind of the MacGuffin.
Yeah.
It's kind of sad. I feel like you could do so much with Kyrie. I feel maybe making her a Princess of Light was a bad idea. Or at least maybe you'd have to retcon it in a way that she's an enigma princess of light. She's the only one who can have darkness or something. I don't know.
Well, I feel like it doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing because even light users like Ericus end up being not the most sane of people. So
Yeah,
I think it
but
works.
he's a light user. A princess of light is someone without any darkness, pure heart.
True. I guess we'll have to see. I guess it just depends on what happens with her. Shall we talk about the probably the more controversial one of the more controversial topics of this game?
I thought we were gonna talk about Roxas.
That's what I mean.
Oh, I like Roxas. I like Ventus more, but I like Roxas. Although I guess
I
Roxas and Ventus are kind of the same.
I guess that's hard to really say at this point. Um, Let me say this. I love the idea of Roxas. I love, and I would, and I'm one of the few people that thinks that tutorial
It's
in
too
Twilight
long.
Town, while it's too long, I feel like it could have worked had you built on the ideas they were trying to sell a bit more. One of the most hard hitting lines in this entire game is when Roxas says, "So I guess I want to know, what do you know about me?" And Naminé says, "You were never supposed to exist, Roxas." And he's in awe, says, "How can you say such a thing, even if it were true?" I feel like there's something to be said there, but I don't know if the game ever fully tells me what that is, or if it ever gives me enough clues as to what I should be taking from that.
I feel like the game wants to continue that plot point with the other nobodies, but they kind of don't because all the nobodies are evil. I feel like maybe the nobodies need to be tragic.
Which I guess you could maybe argue Demix is to some degree.
But the problem though is like they're all just puppets of Zem. Like they don't make Zemnis sympathetic.
Xemnas kind of almost makes himself sympathetic in that line where he talks to Sora at the end of the game. But you're right. None of the and the other issue is,
And
and
that
this is
leads to a
something.
bigger retcon that people got mad about later.
Yeah, we'll talk. Oh, believe me, we'll talk about that much later. But and the final mix definitely does help that a little bit by showing the organization interact a bit more. So there is that. But even then, they're a bit one dimensional.
And see, that's another reason why this is just my Disney bias showing. But you're in the first game. You had the Disney villains as your main baddies. Now, I'm not saying Disney villains are the most complex thing in the world, but they're fun to watch. At least they're one-dimensional evil. They're the good kind, which is like just we're evil, we know it, we enjoy it. Although Maleficent was actually quite, I don't want to say she's complex, but she's definitely interesting. Um,
She's more deeper than the others.
Definitely. Um, she got something. You can see the mechanics of her head. She's a strategist. But and of course the Disney villains, they're fun to watch. Um, but with these guys, like you're going from the Disney villains, the icons of villainy in animation to emo people.
Which I'll give this to some of them. Some of them do have a commanding presence, and I think part of that is due to the voice acting, especially with Syax, who Kirk Thornton, I believe, voices him. He has a presence throughout the entire game, and he's someone that I'm like, ooh, this guy means bad news. But even then, he gets taken out way too easily for me to even.
I feel like you need to give them more to do. Like Syax is second in command, pretty much,
Yeah,
right? I feel like with Zigbar, right? Yeah, Zigbar.
yeah.
I think he works. I think that's something that you need. That Nomura probably needed to think large. I think either should have. I kind of wish now, retrospectively, he did something more with him because of how he's connected to the larger plot.
Yeah,
And that's
and
why,
that's just a little too late.
yeah, in hindsight, that's one of those things where in hindsight you can rewrite it, or like Zigbar, like, you can write where he knows more that's going on.
Yeah,
He's part of the wider scheme. Um, that's how I would do it at least. Like, I would make it that Zack is second in command, but he's only loyal to the organization and its official cause, while Zemnis knows Zigbar better because he's part of the grander scheme of things.
yeah, but we're gonna have to talk about that a little later. We'll touch on that later on as we're delving into the plot.
And
But
then
in fact,
and then the others are kind of just they're there.
yeah,
Maybe the guy with the blonde guy who goes dance, water, dance. He's kind of funny, but
he's kind of comic relief, but not a very. He's comic relief in a very pathetic way.
which could work.
It could, but
Does,
I.
yeah. So those are villains. Those are the villains. And
Now let's get on to the things that really bring this game down. I'm going to start with one world because this world I think sets in stone a lot of the problems I have with this game overall. We're going to start with Beast Castle.
Beast, you were such a good part of the first game.
And the issue with that is that the first game, it didn't matter if the movie, it didn't matter if you had seen the movie or not. It simply treated them as a character and built off what was already there. In this game, you have a hard time really knowing if it's trying to follow the movie or if it's trying to be something different, but you can't really tell because certain characters aren't there to make it work. So you're just kind of in awe. You're like, what's going on? What am I?
All we
What am
know
I
is
supposed
that this is during Belle's time as captives, or in the Beast Castle.
or supposedly as captives. She's never mentioned that in the entire game, which is a bit worrisome in my opinion.
Well, Beauty and the Beast is kind of worrisome in terms of Stockholm Syndrome.
But I mean, just in plot-wise, it's very... It doesn't work in the regards that it tries to make me buy all these things at once and kind of give me the argument it only works because we say it works.
Right. And
In the
the
sense
only
that...
thing Ansor remembers the Beast.
Huh?
Ansor remembers the Beast.
Yeah. So...
Yeah. I don't have much to say about Beast Castle. I never liked that world anyway.
I didn't either. I think part of it was just due to me trying to wrap my head around it as a whole.
If you want to sum up a world that sums up my problems with this game, it's Agrabah the Second Visit. Biggest disappointment ever.
And I feel like that could have worked the most, but Shafar is the most one-dimensional there than he ever is.
He's more interesting in the first game.
Yeah. And even I will say this, and the second Aladdin movie, he is more interesting there than he is here.
I think that's just the problem with them not utilizing the Disney villains, or just the Disney worlds in general.
Yeah.
Like,
Because it's almost as if they're too afraid to step on our shoes, as if it's afraid to get their hands dirty and do some new stuff with these characters.
They did in the first game.
Which in the first game, this is what made it work.
Did you play Atlantica by any chance?
In the first game?
No, second game.
No, but I remember that world vividly.
Okay, so here's the weird thing. In the first game, they don't follow the movie at all. Second game, it's all by the movie. It's all the movie. It is complete rehash of the movie. And you know what the weirdest thing is? Ursula comes back. There's no explanation for why. And she doesn't even remember who Sora is.
Sora does, but she just kind of writes him off. Also, the other thing, maybe something is mentioned in the game, is why in the hell Ariel even goes along with Ursula to begin with.
It's like, do you remember the first game? Like, it's weird because, okay, you want to know, okay, that's a continuity problem.
Yeah.
She goes along with Ursula. Ariel remembers the first game. King Triton remembers the first game, and I wish they did more with that because I feel like King Triton knows something I don't.
Yeah.
He knows about the Keyblade.
Yeah, and I hope we get to hear more from him later on because I feel like he
I feel
I
like
think he'll be a point later on, especially in 3. But as it stands, that world is just kind of that's a big
and Sora
mesh of
sings.
problems. Not necessarily a bad thing. It's more comical than anything, but it doesn't add anything. I
Okay,
don't
to be
understand
fair,
why
to
it's
be fair, Haley Joel Osment has a good voice, and when he's singing the actual Disney songs, it's not that bad.
yeah.
Because it's a Disney song. Where was I? Oh yeah, but and the weird thing is, but in Halloween Town, they go back, and you have Maleficent resurrect Oogie Boogie, and she remembers him,
Yeah.
and he is part of like the Council of Evil in the first game.
Hey, that's another problem I have is I don't get why Maleficent doesn't get these guys back sooner.
I feel
I'm
like
having a
I feel like, and remember that scene where she does talk about them?
yeah,
Like, what happened to that?
yeah.
Like, where is everyone else? Asks, and then sort of like you don't do anything about that.
Oh, and I know, and people are probably screaming at us, but you know what? I got to bring this up too. The most illogical part of it, and the most not illogical, the most nonsensical part in the entire game, in the entire game, is Pete suddenly have time traveling powers.
And that comes back in DDD, and people hate it. And it's worse, made worse. At least with this one, I feel it's made cartoonish enough.
But and the other thing is, I don't get what the cornerstone of light is supposed to be,
It's
and
a
how
MacGuffin.
Maleficent
It's a MacGuffin. That's
and
what.
how Maleficent's even able to harm it if Pete's the one doing all the work. Shouldn't there be thorns in the Timeless River too? Am I misreading something here? Like
I don't know. I feel like it's one of those things where something happened and then Sora had to change back time, so we're working with like multiple dimension world time traveling thing.
the thing is, I just don't get it. None of it. That entire world makes no sense.
See, that's why you don't add time travel into your games
Exactly.
or
We'll
your
touch on that
stories.
later on.
And it's worse in the DDD because that makes the villain is over or the most overpowered thing ever.
Yeah.
Um, sorry. Oh yeah, Pete too. He's a character.
Yeah, he's
See, that's something
there.
I did in my series. I just introduced Pete from the start.
Yeah.
He's just a villain. And he's part of the Council of Evil.
No, or he'd be a minion of the Council of Evil.
Yeah, he's kind of in my story. He's kind of like low tier. I kind of have like a hierarchy going on where it's sort of like Maleficent, Jafar, and Hades kind of form like a tributive. Like they're like the main three, and then Hook, Ursula, and Oogie are kind of like the second half, and then Pete's at the bottom.
You also want to talk about not knowing what continuity is. Let me get to these two people. And Joel knows who, and if any of you follow my Twitter, you know exactly who I'm about to talk about. So, as many of you know, two characters from two of my all-time favorite games are in this game. That should be cause for joy, right? The problem is,
Wrong.
here's the issue with that. They are complete insults to the characters. Arn and Vivi are the two I'm talking about.
I always forget which one Arndt is.
Arn's the red guy from Underworld.
Oh, that's Aaron. Aaron.
Arn.
Yeah, I didn't know who those were when I first saw them. I didn't know what anime was. I just knew Disney. No, I did know what anime was. I just didn't care.
The issue with the two of them, and I'm not, and if any of you want details as to why I feel like they don't work at all, go to my Twitter and pull up my rants on the two of them. The simple fact of the matter is, they try to reinvent characters that if you try to reinvent them, then you basically they're not characters. They're not the characters they
No.
are.
I think reinventing a character. I feel like there's a difference between. I feel like you can reinvent a character. Just you keep the core of the character the
Yeah.
same. Like here's an example. I'm gonna shell out my series again, but this is the only example I have right now. Okay, so in my series, I'm gonna reinvent Vanitas in a way that he's just a lot more jokey and psychotic. Like he's a lot more kind of. I don't want to say he's bouncing off the walls, but he's a little more, got an energetic side to him. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Think Heath Ledger Joker in a way. But he's still the core of the character. He's still evil, psychotic, and dark Sora.
Yeah. And the thing is, you removed any of those core traits from those characters, so they're simply just cameos that don't amount to anything. And the biggest disservice to that is they are the two most important characters that could have tied into anything this game was trying to talk about, and you just shove them aside. Vivi in particular.
Would you like to give an example of how? Because I would love to know myself.
Okay, for any of you who know Final Fantasy IX, Vivi's entire character arc is coping with his own existence and having to move on from that. Something that could have very easily have tied in with the rest of the organization plot. And I feel like if you had had him interact with Roxas a little bit in the times where he's learning all this from Naminé, that could have built Roxas up a lot more. Because Vivi has to come to learn that his existence was merely to be a tool of war and nothing else. And he has to make his own existence based off of that. He makes himself what he wants to be. And I feel like that should have been a theme at the core of this.
I'm curious how you do that theme if Roxas is only going to be your character, though, for like the first 30 minutes.
I feel like it could be juggled even throughout the rest of the game, too.
Ooh, actually, no. I know how you do it. You bring that theme back in. You should have. This is why Kingdom Hearts 2 works better than the TV series. You should have bring that theme back in the moment Sora finds out that he's helping the organization just by killing Heartless. The minute you take away Sora being the Keyblade wielder, it's like Identity Crisis 101, right? Happening right there.
Yeah.
I don't know how you do it until up to that point, but that's how I would do it.
But there's a lot of opportunities for those two characters, and that's what this game boils down to. Sadly, is a lot of missed opportunities that this game that brings up but never uses.
If you had like a top 5 missed opportunities, what would it be? I would love to hear this.
I think Timeless River is a huge missed opportunity. I think Agrabah is a huge missed opportunity.
No, like a little more in depth. Like, what could have they done? What could they do? What could have they done?
Timeless River actually give Pete a purpose and give him power that would make him on point with Sora, Donald, and Goofy, and make him more of a threat. With Jafar, bringing him and Maleficent back together and deal with the two of them working around each other. That's probably the biggest point I think this game just squanders and never uses, and that's a real shame because it was interesting seeing the two of them go back and forth with each other in Kingdom Hearts 1.
That's something I'm keeping in my series. I don't break up the group of villains and I kind of have like Jafar go through these many story arcs. He's like the Starscream of the villains. And if you watch Transformers Prime, he's probably going to go through that similar arc.
Yeah. I think, like I said, Arn and BV, I think, are the two biggest missed opportunities. I've already touched upon it with BV, but
I don't know much about Arn, so I don't know what his thing's all about.
I would say for Arn, the best thing you could do, and you're going to laugh at this, Joel, he would have been the prime character to call Sora out on his childlessness. Says he would be the character to say, grow up. He wouldn't even need to say it like that. He just need to cut him a look and just say very few words, and that would help Sora much more in the long run, because that is him and Tidus's relationship in the entire game in Final Fantasy X. It's him telling Tidus, you need to grow up. You need to make these decisions. It doesn't matter if you don't want to or not. You're going to have to, whether you like it or not.
He would actually make a good cameo for the second half of the game, I feel. Especially, that bad idea. I was going to say he's going to tell Sora to web up and just start killing Heartless again. And that's the thing about the first game I really liked, is that their Final Fantasy cameos, for the most part, Cloud's arguable. They fit in the main story plot.
Yeah.
I don't know how true to the form they are compared to their Final Fantasy versions. But they fit within the story. They have a purpose. They're there to tell. They're there to tell Sora the exposition. Give him a little bit of plot. They're connected to the villain. They have like a goal. Go back home.
I think the thing with Squall is he's a reinvention basically, but he's a valid one at that. He's kind of the mature version of Squall that I think everybody would have liked to have seen, and I think that's why a lot of people don't tend not to complain about him.
I kind of write him like the resistance leader to the Heartless.
And that's what he should be, and what he basically kind of is, and to some degree. Yuffie, Aerith, and
Sid.
Sid are serviceable. They're fine. They aren't too different. Sid's a lot more toned down because you kind of have to be. I mean, he was always a vulgar loudmouth in Final Fantasy VII, so you have to tone that down to some degree. But
Right. Cloud, I don't know. He was fine.
of course, if you're going to do a Square Enix game and it's going to have anime characters, of course you're going to do Cloud.
Which is funny because Cloud gets more to do in the second game, and yet he's not still pointless.
I'd say he's okay. He doesn't give much to Sora. I feel like he gives more to Sora in the first game than he does in the second one. And the second game, he's just cameo material. Same with Sephiroth, though. I feel like Sephiroth's a lot more fun because you get to fight him.
Well, yeah, you got to fight him in the first game.
Yeah, he is hard in both games. Let me tell you, I'd say he's probably harder in 2.
Yikes. Yeah, and it's kind of funny how I wish they intertwined Sephiroth more into the main story.
I do too.
I feel like he just shows up because it's like, I'm Sephiroth, I'm famous. And then me and Cloud have our fight, and we don't contribute at all.
He's there because Square Enix says he will be there.
Exactly. Let's see. What's your least favorite? Okay, what else is your least favorite world besides the Beast Castle?
Oh, what is another one?
Like, is that the worst? Is that the worst world?
I would argue that it might be the worst. What else? The Land of Dragons is fine. It's serviceable, but doesn't give much.
I feel like the problem with the worlds is that they either should serve the overall plot, or okay, we were talking about this last night. It wasn't last night. I'm gonna quote a friend here for a second. Hang on. Let me get out my Google Doc. We were talking about this. I was not Cole. I was talking to another guy. Let's see if I actually have it with me. No, there we go. Hang on. Sorry, folks. We were talking about the worlds, and he was talking about how that, according to him, a lot of the story was gathered on only so many worlds, and yet there was a lot of story to tell. So it's been here we go. He says he's saying that Kingdom Hearts 2 was trying to be more like a series of lessons most of the time. Japan has been going through a time of increasing disgust with human nature, and yet a lot of the older generation finds this troubling. And so Kingdom Hearts 2 focuses on embracing human nature when one can.
And I feel like that's a valid point to some degree, because this game tries to the issue with that, and I'll get into that. The thing is, this game tries to drive a lot of lessons home. They don't have a lot of credence a lot of the time, and they end up not just being kind of there for the most part and not intertwining at all.
I feel like with Kingdom Hearts 2, it should have been, if you're going to keep the plot you keep, it should have been more character-driven game. By that I mean, okay, Kingdom Hearts 1 is a plot-driven game in that stuff is learned, characters grow, but I feel like you can have a plot-driven story in which it's sort of like, we do this thing, we do this thing, we do this thing, we do this thing. And it's sort of like we keep the story moving.
Mm-hmm.
Here, it should have been, Sora goes to this world. He learns this. He grows from this. Sora goes to this world. He learns this. He grows from this.
Kind of like Avatar: The Last Airbender in the early seasons.
Definitely. The only problem is this is a sequel, so
yeah,
he's grown. He should be growing.
Yeah. The other issue too that I was going to bring up is they try to drive lessons in, and they try to drive in ideas that would lead to lessons. But they never go anywhere. They never go the extra mile to drive the nail in the coffin and say, here's what you should take away from this. What you do with it is up to you. I feel like that's a good portion of the nobody plot. The idea of existence, but an interesting one, is one this game does not understand at all.
I feel like you could have gotten away with the idea of existence, like, even in little ways, like, the Mulan story, like, do you exist to be a soldier? What are you?
Yeah.
You're kind of like, is Mulan? Mulan is the girl, but yet she needs to be a man to be a soldier. Well, that affects her existence, I guess. something
Yeah.
like that.
And the thing is, I know that
I don't know
the
how
game.
Aladdin works, but still.
I and the thing is, I've seen Square Enix drive these types of ideas home before, so this should have been something they should have been able to get right. And it's just kind of mind-boggling that they just kind of leave it up in the air.
I would love to hear about the production of this game.
I
What
would
would be a
too.
good example of ideas or lessons in the worlds you visit that note get brought up or need to go the extra mile? Like, got an example?
That's a good one. Well, I'd say for the Beast Castle, for example, I feel like that needed to tie in more to the main plot. The other issue, and this is something I'm kind of boggled at, is they bring up Kyrie at the end of the second visit of Beast Castle, but they never do anything with that. I feel like that was supposed to tie in the lessons somewhat, but it's also having a hard. It's trying to figure out what these lessons we're supposed to be getting here, and also trying to figure out what they mean to the overall story. I think that world overall struggles with relevance.
Right. I think.
And
Oh, sorry. Keep going.
no, you go ahead.
No. You were gonna say something.
Um, I guess the lesson you could take away from that is you should pay attention to your friends. You should. What am I trying to say?
I feel like then if you do that, you need to have like a story within a story. Like, I feel like, let's say I'm okay. I'm shilling again, but I'm writing a series. If I do Beast Castle and the lesson is you should be listening to your friends, then through a TV perspective, what happens is you have the A plot, which is Sora's not listening to Donald and Goofy. Although I feel like by then that kind of gets a little hectic because I've kind of been writing Sora somewhat egotistical a little bit in the beginning because I'm the key.
Yeah,
Um, but you try to do that. Sora's not listening to them, and then that leads to consequences. Beast isn't doing that, and that leads to consequences. They learn something, they're not listening, and then at the end they learn to listen.
yeah,
That's how I would do it at least. Also back to the themes of existence. I feel like Pirates of the Caribbean could have made a great example of that.
yeah.
A pirate's life for me. That's part of existence, I think. At least I
And
hope.
there's a lot more stuff we have to touch on, and I think basically what we covered so far is that this story is very hectic and doesn't connect like it should, and that ends up leaving it very flat.
Like, what are the stakes? What am I fighting for? And Kingdom Hearts 1, I kind of knew what you knew what you were fighting for, or at least by the halfway point. No, you knew because you had these Disney villains doing their thing.
The times that it tries to include states, it's very, very clunky and very almost non-existent. The prime example I think is when Sora's on Ansem's computer, and he's like Riku and Kairi, Riku and Kairi, Riku and Kairi, and
Yep.
he's like, no, even Ansem's computer doesn't know, and we're supposed to feel that, but I'm like, what did you expect?
I feel like I feel like you. We talked about this once that the looking for Riku and Kairi thing kind of gets tedious.
Yeah,
I don't know how you fix that when it comes to like the first game.
I think we need to see that nobody's actually causing distress, because sadly we don't see them causing a lot of distress.
It's always the
And
heartless.
exactly, we don't see them as a big enemy. Well, we do, but not as a big destructive force. We don't see them as anything as them hurting our main characters. So we don't think much of them at first.
I feel like, again, if you were doing it as a series, or maybe not even just a series, well, series 2, but the nobodies need to be making Heartless, not Maleficent. She could kind of be like their pawn into making Heartless because she commands the Heartless. But it's sort of like the first half. Well, this would work better in the series overall. Like the first half is like you see the nobodies, they're spreading, and they're just making Heartless. and they're nobody they're making heartless. Like maybe you should give the actual like nobody minions that ability to attack people and make heartless or something.
Let me be clear with everybody. Joel and I are not harping on these multiple issues because they were not what we wanted. This all exists as a part of a larger problem, which is the structure just doesn't allow for the story it's trying to tell.
Do you think that's a problem with the medium it's in?
No, I think that's just down to poor execution.
Yeah, that's true. Because Kingdom Hearts 1, I feel like the problem with Kingdom Hearts 2, it's too serialized.
What do you mean?
No, not serialized. It's too episodic. That's better.
Yeah, I agree.
Kingdom Hearts 1 is like a movie. There's a beginning, middle, and end. For the most part, it leaves it open-ended. But it's like you're building up to your climax, and then it ends.
The thing about this game is it always treats it like a TV series, and just how the way it's stylized,
and also there's
like in how the worlds are introduced and how the worlds end. It feels very much like a TV series. It's very jarring moving on from Chain of Memories in 1.
It reminds me of season 1 of Rebels between season 2. Season 1 was more serialized in the fact that we kept building off every episode for the most part if you binge it. And in season 2, it's like we have your beginning, which told a good chunk of plot. Then filler, nothing happens. Another episode that has a good chunk of plot. Nothing happened. The finale, that's where all the story happens. And with Kingdom Hearts 2, it's very much that way. You have the beginning, the 30-minute tutorial. Then you go to Sora.
Well, the 2-hour tutorial.
2 hours. It was 2 hours?
Yeah.
Oh gosh, it was longer than I remembered. And then you go to Yen Sid, he gives you your exposition dump, that's fine. That's your beginning. And then you go to the world. And you go to Al Bastion, that's fine, there's your beginning. And then world, nothing happens. Plot world, nothing happened. Twilight Town, plot, ending, we're done.
Yeah.
And I feel like my series is screwed then, because then I'm going to have an entire season where it's just that serialized format like Kingdom Hearts 1, and then I'm going to do episodic stuff. But I feel like...
Not if you write it in a certain way.
That's true. And if they wrote the world in a certain way, we would not be having this problem. Or we wouldn't be complaining it much. I feel like people would still be complaining because people don't like it when it's like, okay, the one game was one way, then they switched it to another format.
But that's not necessarily a problem as much as it is... it's an identity crisis at this point.
Right, because Kingdom Hearts 1, again, was such a movie. You could make a movie out of Kingdom Hearts 1, I feel.
Yeah.
It's long enough, I think. You would have to chop down some stuff, and the worlds would definitely have to be finagled. I think that one works better, the series, too, but I'm not going to keep harping on this.
Continue.
But, again, the story was structured where you had your beginning, you built, you climaxed. Or technically, you have 2 climaxes if you count Maleficent and then Ansem. But with Kingdom Hearts 1, it's like you have like 3 climaxes, and then it's like you don't build, but you're not building. It's like stagnant, then climax, then stagnant, climax, and then we're done.
Yeah.
You were going to say something.
I feel like we've tackled the inconsistencies and the continuity enough. So why don't we talk about the one thing that, in my opinion, is probably the best part about this game, and that is ending. Removing all the nonsense and the inconsistency leading up to it, the ending as a whole.
Are we talking about From the World That Never Was to Destiny Island?
Yeah, I'm talking about From the Realm of Darkness to Destiny Islands, where we see Riku and Sora talking with each other, and then Destiny Islands.
Okay. The problem, though, is that you had to get through so much nothing just to get there. I feel like Kingdom Hearts 2 is something that where you, if you like, if this were a TV series or a movie and you would edit it, if you like to fan edit this, you would just, it should just be then Twilight Town, Hollow Bastion, Twilight Town, Realm of Darkness, World of Never Was. That's your game. That's your story.
Yeah. And I feel like the ending scenes are well written and nostalgic in the sense that these are two characters that have been through a lot, so you feel for them. It feels like you went through a slog fest trying to get there. Don't get me wrong, that is a big issue with the ending overall.
I feel like if Kingdom Hearts is a 22 episode run, then Kingdom Hearts 2 should be edited down to a 13 episode arc.
Yeah. And I feel like the last few scenes are well done. I feel like
lots of emotion.
Yeah,
and like I love Christopher Lee's speech.
Yeah.
My problem with the ending, on the whole, is more hindsight again, because a lot of that weight is completely destroyed when Birth by Sleep hits.
Yeah.
Because Kingdom Hearts 2 ends as a perfect dropping off point.
Yes, exactly.
And in a weird way, Kingdom Hearts 1, Chain of Memories, and 3 are like a two, my bad, are a trilogy within themselves. In the overall game, if you put everything in order.
Yeah.
While, when people play Kingdom Hearts 1, 2, and 3, because you're going to have those people who just want to play the numbered games, because those are those people, because, you know, they're the numbered ones, right?
Well, Chain of Memories technically isn't, but I can be your main.
Yeah, you know, for like 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
But the problem is when you play 3 is going to build on so much stuff that we've been laying the groundwork for.
Yeah.
2 just builds off of Chain of Memories, and 1 to a certain extent.
And whether or not it all works, Nomura's got his work really cut out for him. And going off of this game, it's hard to kind of not worry about how 3 will turn out.
Especially with Leonard Nimoy's passing.
Yeah, I wonder how. Let's talk about the biggest. We have to talk about this retcon because it destroys any of the good ideas that the villain plot of this game potentially had. And that is when Xemnas reveals to Sora in Dream Drop Distance that nobody can actually get hearts, and they can cultivate hearts over time.
Right. I feel like okay, here's the thing. I've been thinking about this actually since we've been doing this podcast. I feel like you could get away with the idea of the organization wanting to be the 13 Darknesses. That makes sense.
Yeah, that does make sense.
But the heart thing doesn't.
Yeah.
Or unless it's like an experimental, unless you like do it with like a Xehanort's experimental side, like he's trying to infuse them with his heart or something.
But the issue still remains that this game is left. You can't play this game the same way you did in the beginning.
You can't view it after. Honestly, you can't view Kingdom Hearts 2 after Birth by Sleep the same way.
Yeah, and even after Birth by Sleep and Dream Drop Distance, you cannot view the game in the same way, and that's a bit of an issue. That games coming out of this should have built onto instead of reworking a lot of the stuff that had happened.
Like, I feel like you need a thing where I feel like Xehanort's Heartless and Xemnas need to. This is again something I do in my series. I'm gonna keep shelling. Is it where they allude to a bigger baddie? Like in my series, spoiler alert, I'm gonna have a scene where the two of them are talking, and they talk about the Master. Like they don't call him Master Xehanort, they just call him the Master. I know it's not the Master from Doctor Who fans, but it's sort of like they know there's a greater threat, or there's a bigger bad, that they're just higher ups in a greater man's scheme.
I think.
Because Master Xehanort, I love him.
I do too.
He's the best.
And I would say Xemnas would have been more of a tragic character had you left that story arc alone and just have him. Maybe have Master Xehanort try to say, "I'll give you a heart if you follow along with me."
But to be fair, Xemnas is his nobody though.
Yeah, so it wouldn't really work. Like that would have easily worked in the long run.
Well, not unless you kind of do a thing where they're their own entities as well,
That's what I mean.
as well as being the same person.
Yeah. So
That's
it's
I feel like it's Kingdom Hearts 2, because Kingdom Hearts 2 really builds Xemnas as the big bad.
yeah.
But then you find out Master Xehanort exists, and I'm willing to trade up Xemnas for Master Xehanort, to be honest.
Yeah.
He's a better villain.
I'm willing to I'm willing to what they kind of made Xemnas indeed Dream Drop Distance is kind of being Sora's arch rival. That's an interesting concept to deal with, and having Ansem, of course, beat Riku's. That was an idea I always really liked.
Oh,
It's
that
just,
one always works. That rivalry between Ansem and Riku always works, in my opinion.
and I feel like they tried to make it work with Sora and Xemnas with that retcon. Sadly, it did more harm than it helped.
I don't think it works at all, to be honest, because I don't feel like they don't have chemistry.
Yeah.
I feel like maybe you could have done it though, where because Roxas went to Xemnas
Yeah, I agree.
or something like that, and Xemnas was Roxas's boss, for lack of a better term. So maybe I feel like that could have been a thing.
What we're trying to get at, people. I'm sorry for harping on this so much. Is it's the definition. It's basically the definition of retcons in some of the most convoluted ways. And I really hope Nomura realizes this because he makes it. Because from the way he plays it in the other games, it's almost as if he doesn't recognize that there are issues here that need to be addressed.
I don't think he knows where he's going. I think he's making up.
I don't either. And if any of you know Final Fantasy 15 and the development hell that went through, and he was at the helm of that,
be afraid for 3.
Then you have reason to worry.
And now we're and of course I don't know what the story is behind 2.8 apart from the trailers, but now we're getting like the ancient past. And,
which could work, but it's
and like the Jedi Council of Keyblade wielders. By the way, you wanted to talk about the Keyblade, and we never got around to that.
Yeah. Speaking of that, Council of Keyblade wielders, that could be cool if they were established beforehand.
Well, technically, they kind of birth by sleep. Never mind.
Yeah, I was about to say if they were established beforehand, that might have worked a lot better. But let's talk. There are two big things that we need to talk about that I don't think this game really gets at all. The first being the Keyblade.
How do you think it doesn't get the Keyblade?
Well, for one, the Keyblade is kind of viewed as this sacred thing, this kind of thing that barely anybody's supposed to have. It made sense for Mickey and Sora and one, and here and the other thing that I had scratched my head at is that Riku somehow gets a Keyblade. I know I get that he inherited it, but I need more info leading in to him getting it.
I feel what you need to do with the Keyblade is sort of do it like the lightsaber. I feel like you need to treat the Keyblade wielders like the Jedi.
I do too.
And the Darksiders like the Sith. But that's what I'm doing at least. Like I'm sort of like, again, going back to my series, I'm like setting up things like, like people are saying, how they have books about this Keyblade and ancient warriors and temples and stuff like that.
But here's the other big thing: is the Keyblade a will? Does the Keyblade have a will all to its own? And that's something that's never been properly, at least not in this game. It's never really dealt with.
I feel like you could do both, where they have wills of their own, yet you can also have like a Jedi Order kind of a thing of Keyblade wielders.
But in this game, it's more of a plot device than it is anything else.
Well, in the first game, I have a question. What do you prefer? Like the Keyblade is like a one and done weapon. There's only one of them, and it only goes to one person, or do you prefer it more Jedi Order kind of a thing?
Now I prefer it as a Jedi Order. I'm saying the lead up to it does not let that make sense.
You mean like how it's portrayed in Kingdom Hearts 1?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is it kind of like the Order? Is it kind of like the Order 66 thing where no one's around anymore? Are there Keyblade wielders out there? We just don't know them, or the Keyblade just hasn't chose a master in so long? What was the point? led to there being so few Keyblade wielders? What's that? I need to know that
Because
stuff.
there was a Keyblade War, and there's a Keyblade graveyard.
Yeah, but that's not revealed in one or two. Well, it
Oh,
kind of is in two.
oh, right. Well,
Don't you agree? Kind of. That's something that's kind of. I feel like if that had been seeded a bit more, I feel like it would have made this game a lot more stronger because there's an even deeper complexity going on here.
like maybe you could have wrote it like the Keyblade was there were Keyblades were used to be built, but you needed like the pure light, and then after the war, because apparently that's when the world was destroyed, the light died, but and so like a lot of the light left the Keyblades, and now like remnants exist with certain people. But then again, then you fall into the trap of what the heck are Terra, Aqua, and Vent.
Yeah, it's it's confusing as all hell, and it's something that I don't think Nomura realized he really needed to touch upon until finally.
Exactly.
And I guess we got to touch on this because I just realized this playing this time how much this thing is an enigma that makes absolutely no sense. And that is the actual Kingdom Hearts.
Yeah, and I'm even trying to figure that out myself for my series. So like,
What?
what is
I'm
it?
trying to figure. I know it's to be the heart of all worlds and makes up all people, but what does that mean exactly? Does it have a will of its own? Does it only act in certain events? It's supposed to act with the key with the X blade.
I don't know what it like. What was the door we opened in the first game? What's the big?
Exactly. I don't understand what any of that means, and I don't understand. And in one, it's almost played like it is that door, and it's played for kind of ambiguous, and it kind of works in one a little. But then in two, it acts like it's almost has a will of its own. But then it goes. But then the secret endings contradict that entirely. So it's like, what is the deal here? I need to know this.
I'm trying to figure it out myself because I'm getting closer and I gotta figure it out. Otherwise, I'm
It's
screwed.
the one thing. It's the one thing. It's the one biggest I don't know in the entire series that really needs to be figured out. And I think they're trying to get to that,
I always
but
got
they've
the
but
sense
they've
it's like,
gone back and forth on it so much. It's hard to really know at this point.
is it like a source of It's a source of ultimate power.
Yeah, I guess.
I think. Uh, I feel like if you were to rewrite it, you would need to make it that what we saw was not Kingdom Hearts. Those were two
Yes,
different things.
I agree. That's. I feel like that's the only way you can do it at this rate.
Like the door to darkness was just a door to darkness, but then again, the whole light thing doesn't make any sense.
I guess you could. I guess maybe they could always do the half-ass thing, which Kingdom Hearts is all about a different perspective. But I think that's running away from from the real issue at hand, and that's something we need to know going forward. And now's the best time to touch on this. What do we think the future of this is going to be, Joel?
Very convoluted. Um, okay, I always got the sense that what the organization were doing, they were making artificial Kingdom Hearts
Uh,
out of the hearts of the heartless.
Somehow,
That's the direction I'm going to take it. At least I would take it.
yeah,
As for what we do, Kingdom Hearts 3 has an advantage and a disadvantage. It has the advantage of finally having some hindsight, because now we're finally moving forward and we're building off stuff of all the prequel stuff we've been doing. It has a disadvantage in that a lot of that stuff doesn't make any sense in the first place. So we got
yeah.
Master Xehanort, and we're finally doing the ultimate big bad, which is hopefully the ultimate big bad.
Well, we know there's going to be more after this. We just know this is the end of the Xehanort saga.
See, that's the problem. They didn't build up. I feel like if you were to do this in hindsight, in a series or in a game, like it would be Ansem is your level 1 villain, Xemnas is your level 2, the organization and Xemnas are like the two thing. I'd make Vanitas number 3. Like he'd be your third ring of evil. Well, technically the villains would be the first, then Ansem, then Xemnas in the organization, then Vanitas, and then finally Master Xehanort. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And to be fair, they can always get away with doing another story, and they could win us over. Who knows? But the odds are really stacking in their favor. It feels like the only reason, and I know the reason we're getting these is because Nomura, I guess, cares about this so much, and the fact that it makes money.
Well, it does. Why I haven't gotten my TV series and some comics and some books from it, I don't know why.
Exactly. Well, we kind of have with manga.
Yeah, the manga makes more sense in some cases. They do a lot of cool stuff in the manga. That kind of just make the world a little more filling. That's because they're not doing it from. Can we touch about this a little bit? Because I feel like we touched about this a little bit, but then we backed off. Is medium a problem here?
No, I don't think medium is the problem here. I think the main problem is the structure they chose for this game did not accommodate anything.
You say structure a lot. Maybe I feel like you've been a bit vague about that. Could you emphasize?
What I mean is how the story is told and how we get the information, how the story is told, making the worlds more integral and making it more of what Kingdom Hearts was as a movie-like experience where each world builds off the next instead of making it so episodic. That's what I mean by structure.
So, okay. Serialized storytelling versus episodic storytelling.
Maybe the right word is format.
No, yeah, format. I feel like Kingdom Hearts is more of a serialized game, or an arcy game. Like you have no, because the arcs are for television. A serialized game that everything built off one another, and Kingdom Hearts 2 is episodic. And I don't think episodic is necessarily a bad thing.
I don't think so either. It just
I know a lot of good episodic series.
You have to make them relevant in some way, shape, or form instead of it just being a kind of fun Disney road trip.
Yeah, that's kind of definitely. I feel like while Kingdom Hearts 1 has a bit of that going for it, at least the road trip is important.
Yes.
Like, we're going to these different worlds, and my theory that kind of played off is, let's go to this world today, but there's a purpose to it.
Yeah.
Or even, because in the manga they do something interesting where Sid can communicate through Travis Town.
Yeah,
so it's
that's an interesting idea.
Like, Sid's like, okay, folks, you gotta go here because we got some intel. Maleficent's on the move, kind of a thing. And so, Thor's he's giving Thor his mission of the day.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like Kingdom Hearts 2 doesn't have a good through line.
Yeah.
And Kingdom Hearts 1 does. Chain of Memories, I just think needs to just be a Riku story.
Yeah.
So did we touch on everything?
I think we have. Is there anything we haven't touched on?
Is the final mix version? No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't.
Yeah,
change
the final mix version adds in a couple scenes. It makes things a tad bit better, but nothing that makes things make. It makes some things make a bit more sense, but not in ways that I wish it would have.
Right. Where does this rank for you in terms of Kingdom Hearts games? Best or worst? Normal. Is it the worst? Is it the best? Is it the middle tier? Nah, I think Days is worst.
I call this slightly below average. I'd say lower middle tier.
So if you rank it the worst, it's above Days, which is what do you consider?
I'd say the worst is Recoded.
Oh, that's right.
Dream Drop Distance, Days, 2, Birth by Sleep, and 1.
Really, Dream Drop Distance less than Days?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. I like Dream Drop Distance more just because we're moving forward. We're getting some momentum. Kept going back. I
haven't gone through Days in quite a while, so that might change too.
For me, I would rank it as okay. Let's just do my ranking. Number one's Kingdom Hearts. I always love a Kingdom Hearts. Number 1, the first best. Birth by Sleep second. I feel like there's a drop in quality though, but after Kingdom Hearts 1, but we'll just go through there. Birth by Sleep I like second best. I think it has a better story overall. I think there's more interesting things going on.
Oh, I forgot to put Chain of Memories. I put Chain of Memories. I'd say below Days. And maybe below Dream Drop Distance.
I like Dream Drop Distance. I think like number 3 the most. Honestly, I like the forward momentum over anything. And Master Day Nord. Um, then then Chain of Memories probably. Then probably 2 is like so 2 is number 5. Then Days, that's number 6. And I guess Recoded is number 7. I don't think I skipped anything, so I think I got them all.
So I think that's going to be it for us, folks. I hope we didn't hurt your feelings too much.
Nah, I've been waiting for this day for a while. I'm tired of people praising Kingdom Hearts 2 at the best. Kingdom Hearts 1 is way better. I've been saying it for years. I hope you join us again because I want to talk more Kingdom Hearts with you, Cole. Maybe we could do a retrospective of my series, which I keep shelling. Shell. Plug.
I would even say, and if any of you have interpreted the things we talked about differently, please do let us know because I do want to try to understand this game better. But if you've seen something that I haven't, please communicate that to me.
And write fan fiction about it. I feel like there are great writers out there who could take these concepts and really make a cohesive universe out of it. Don't make me be the only person who's writing a series. Do it yourself too. I feel like this needs a Lawrence Kasdan. He wrote episode 5 and he took all of George's ideas and kind of just helped sort of smooth them out a bit. Where is Kingdom Hearts Lawrence Kasdan? But yeah, Kingdom Hearts would make an interesting expanded universe, I feel. I don't know how you would do it, but you would probably have to move away from Disney stuff a lot.
Yeah.
Oh, I guess that's the one last thing we didn't talk about. Do you think the fact it does move away from the Disney stuff hurts it, or that's just more my personal bias getting in the way?
I don't necessarily think it's a problem. I think it's a problem that it wastes a lot of those before it actually attempts to do anything interesting with those anime parts.
Yeah, probably. Okay, that is our first episode of a series of retrospective events. I'm gonna call it that. I like that title.
Yeah.
So join us next time when we do another one of these. I don't know what we're gonna do. Hopefully it'll be sooner than later because I like doing these. Until next time, I'm JID123.
And I'm Nero Cole telling you, you will be the one to open the door to light.
Light. But why? Goodbye.